morning, everyone.
Good morning.
At least I know you're all alive. I guess what comes across my mind is the causes and conditions. Recently, for whatever reason it is, I've been thinking about cause and effect, cause and effect. And I think it's part of our teachings, that for every cause there's always an effect, if the effect is another cause, etc., etc., etc. And as I reflect upon my life, I ask the question, what brought me here? Born and raised in Hawaii, lived there all my life except for 5 years, actually 10 years, attending University of Hawaii, living in Japan for 5 years, going back to Hawaii again to work with my family, and now ending here in New York and being right here in Jones Teaching Center. I can only begin to imagine or be amazed by how interesting life is and the paths that we led and live. How many of you are aware of that? How many of you find it exciting to live? I guess the rest decided. And as was discussed earlier, I've never really spoke to large groups, so I'm very hesitant to be able to express my ideas. However, I think what I've learned from this journey, and the other week we had Mark Sensei at New York Buddhist Church, and when we were having breakfast together before he left, he said, "Sensei, I discovered something about myself." And he said, "What is it?" "I think I'm the world's biggest bakatare." What do you mean? I don't know. I find myself in the world's biggest bakatare, but how grateful I am to be bakatare. Because in the search or this discovery of finding myself, I realized that it was meant for a person like me that Amida made those vows. And so it is that I'm given the opportunity to share my thoughts with you. And the subject, of course, is dukkha. And I'll be very honest and tell you, when you ask for doctrine, I don't know. But if you talk about everyday life, maybe you can sit down over a cup of coffee or something and discuss things that go on in our lives. I think that's my strength. So I'd like to share some of my things with you. And I was involved with choosing the theme for this gathering. So we all know dukkha means suffering. And for some reason they said, "Well, Sensei, what do you think? What's the problem? Is dukkha really a problem?" And the reason I'm saying that is because I've begun to realize recently all of the issues that we face, whether it's Hawaii or here in the States, is how many of us are listening? How many of us have actually bought into the religion of Jodo Shinshu? How many of us have bought into Buddhism itself? The books that we read, all the information is there. Shakyamuni spent so many years of his life ministering to us that it really isn't a problem. What is the problem is that how many of us are truly listening? Is there anybody here who knows what the cause of suffering is? We often refer to it as the three poisons. Yes, there we go.
Oh, you just said it, the three poisons.
What are they? What are they?
Greed, anger, and ignorance.
Okay, how many of us are innocent of that? Okay, so are we all aware of that? The Shakyamuni himself had said that the causes of all of our sufferings are based upon greed, want, desire, in all different categories, hatred, anger, and ignorance. What is ignorance? What is ignorance? Please.
I think ignorance is when you don't know something but assume based on what you think that you know what something is.
Quite often it's the ego, things like that. And I think one of the greatest books that I read, and people put it on the side, they don't really read it, is The Teaching of Buddha. And you can get it for free, okay? Read it. Because all basic Buddhism is in there. And so whenever I have study classes, and they say, "What are we going to start with? Let's go with Tanisho." And I said, "No, you don't start with Tanisho. Tanisho would probably be the last book that you study. Because unless you have a solid foundation on a basic Buddhism, you're going to ask yourself, what the hell is Shinran saying?" And if you don't have a solid background on Shinran's thought, you won't begin to understand what a genius he was, what a great mind he was. Shinran, in my thinking, was interpreting basic Buddhism in a way that all of us could understand what's going on in my life. What's going on in my life? So often, I think we're all familiar with Shinran's nickname. What did he call himself? Anybody? Gotoku Shinran. What does Gotoku Shinran mean? That's a nice way of saying Bakatari Shinran. Bakatari Shinran. And
In English?
In English, it means idiotic, most idiotic Shinran.
Because I'm not Japanese.
Oh, that's right. I apologize. And his sensei, who was Honen, also had a name similar. Anybody knows? Gucci. Gucci. Gucci means the most idiotic person, one who has no common sense at all. It's another way of saying fool or again bakatare. But what did they mean? I think what it meant was they began to feel the essence of the dynamics of what Namo Amida Butsu is. Here I am in this present life. How grateful I am. As much as I study the teachings of the Buddha, I'm still hitting walls. I still cannot ask myself, what is the essence of life? I cannot understand why I'm having all these issues in my own life. And yet, how grateful I am to know that no matter how grave the situation may be, there is something out there that has made a vow to embrace me unconditionally. And it may not seem a big thing, but I'll share this story with you because a lot of things happened to me which I want to relate to you because it's real. Several years ago, I had an equilibrium problem. It was so severe that the whole world was spinning for several hours. And it happened to be on Easter Sunday. And it was the first time that I've ever gone through something like that. It was like, what is going on in my life? And I started sweating. I couldn't stand up. I kept on falling down. And I said to my wife, can you take me to ER? And she said, what? Because she knows that I don't like doctors. So this must be serious for me to say, can you take me to ER? I went there, and like most facilities, I was there for several hours. And they did everything, testing. And the result was, there's nothing wrong with you. Go see your doctor tomorrow. So I went to the doctor, and he said, well, it seems like you're having a severe, acute equilibrium problem. Doctor, will I get better? Well, it's supposed to clear up. But will I get better? Doctors like to not get away from answering the question. It's supposed to clear up. And so the next 2 weeks, I was in bed. My members were very, very supportive. Sensei, don't worry, we cook for you, everything else. You just rest, okay? But yet, for 2 weeks, I couldn't stand up. I couldn't do anything. And one day I was just lying there, and I asked myself, I know nothing about equilibrium problems. This is the first time I'm having something like this. I wonder what my future is going to be. What would I like to do? What would my reply be if the doctor had said to me, there's nothing we can do for you? Am I just going to lie there and say, I feel sorry for myself? Am I just going to lie there and say, woe is me? I don't know. Then all of a sudden I said to myself, I was given this opportunity to live. I was given this opportunity to wear robes like this. There are people who are counting on me. I'm not going to give up. Even if the doctor says there's no hope for you, as long as I have health, as long as I have the ability to be speaking or doing something, I will do my best. And I began to realize that all the things that I know, all the things that I can do, were completely meaningless. I felt completely helpless in whatever situation I was. And then I just thought about Namo Amida Butsu. And what came to my mind was my grandmother. My grandmother was an Issei. And what I remember of my grandmother was every morning she'd wake up, put it down, ding, ding, and she'd do that. And she was a very quiet woman. She worked very hard. Her life was very simple. In the evening, ding, ding, And throughout her life, what is anybody remembers that? With your grandparents? Even to the point where it's, Bachang, urusai! Urusai means, what a nuisance, you know. But then, when I think about it now, I think she may have reflected upon the life of an Issei first generation, how hard it was, but how much comfort they had from realizing or knowing that there was something out there that embraced her and everybody else unconditionally. So I'm in this similar situation. I don't know what my life is going to be like. And yet, how grateful I am that there is something out there that embraces me unconditionally. And the only words I could say were, Namo Amitabha. If nothing else, Namo Amitabha. I was given this opportunity to receive life. I'm not going to waste it. I will do my best to do whatever I can in whatever way I can. And all I could do was just cry. And at that moment, I could feel this very warm embrace. I can't explain it, but how grateful I am. And so this has been basically the basis of my thinking, that as long as I have life, I would like to do something. And when you come to issues like, how do you say, suffering, as we're just talking about today, it's a matter of perspective. And you get this clear point when you read the teaching of Buddha by Numata, and they have a whole section of the mind, only the state of the mind. It is basically not an outside issue, but the issue is here. And it's how much I buy, or how much I accept, or how much I understand the teachings that is, for me, the answer. I'm not saying that this is what you need to do, but I'm asking you to look into it, please. Because I don't think there's anybody here who can honestly say, I live a life with no problems. But the whole problem is how do we overcome it? I think, as it was stated in this particular section, does the sun know where to shine? Does the rain know where to fall? These are things that just happen. How many of us realize that these are unconditional situations of life that in its own way embrace each and every one of us? How many of us wake up in the morning, even before get out of bed and say, it's going to be a good day? How many of us wake up in the morning without even getting out of bed and say, it's going to be a lousy day? How many of us? I'm not asking you to raise your hand. The day hasn't even begun yet. But through our own perceptions, our own mind, we are determining how the day is going to be. And it's interesting how the mind works. Because if you're going to say it's a good day, we'll find ways to say, I told you it's going to be a good day. And at the same time, it's going to be a lousy day. You find, see, I told you it's going to be a lousy day. We find means by which to justify how we think. So if we have the power to look into things like that, because it's based on the mind, how would you like your tomorrow to be? How would you like your today to be? Is it really suffering that comes from outside? Or is it really from the self? Again, the word perception has become a very, very important part of my life. And also causes and conditions. How many of us are grateful for the life that we have? How did you get here? And don't tell me my father and my mother. How did you get here? I'm very fortunate that in New York, we don't have many Buddhist ministers of Japanese descent. But recently I've become very good friends with Tibetans. And we have a lot of dialogue. In fact, there's one individual, his name is Earl, and he was assistant professor of Tibetan Buddhism, and he's come to our place, and we have a lot of coffee and conversations. And he made this comment. Jodo Shinshu seems to be very simple on the surface, but I tend to sense there's a big a depth to it. And so he wants to study more. I said, Eric, I think there's a reason why you're here. And he said, why? Because you're the connection. You're the connection, I'm the connection. Why? Because all Honen and Shinran said was, call the Buddha's name. but they never explain why. And so, hearing about Onenbutsu and why we call it Buddha's name is where Eric comes in and he fills in the question of different things. So we talked about, even today's discussion, I asked him, Eric, how do you describe dukkha? And so we had a practice session. And he said, I think you're okay. But I think the whole point is, according to Eric, through karmic and causes and conditions that began many countless lifetimes ago, we had accumulated enough good merit to receive human life. Traditionally, there are 6 levels of existence, but when you go to Hanamatsuri next year, you remember that Shakyamuni took 7 steps, specifically 7. What does the 7th step mean? To transcend, to go beyond what we refer to as suffering, to go beyond all the different things that we could consider as being negative. But all it takes is to seriously open your hearts and minds to understand and look into the teachings of Buddha. Well, anyway, he said, it is through countless numbers of good merits they were able to receive one of the highest forms of existence, human life. So the next question is, you have received human life, and even in the homages of three treasures, it begins with, rare it is to receive human life. What does it mean? Anybody? What do you think it means? You didn't get something for nothing. Okay? Again, through countless numbers of causes and conditions. And the reason why it's rare too, I mean, we are now enough to know that there was more than one. But what happened to the rest? Ourselves, were given the privilege to receive human life. Out of countless millions, maybe, thousands, millions. And I think what it's trying to say in its own way is that we all have a purpose. What is our purpose in life? And this is where I think the teachings of the Buddha come in to help us, give us purpose. Sometimes I wonder whether Buddhism is a teaching or a religion. For me, I use the middle path and say it's like a guidebook. So I always go back to the very basics, which is the Four Noble Truths, where the first one is what? Life is full of suffering. But to me, suffering is too harsh a word. I like to say life is full of ups and downs. Yeah, full of ups and downs. And if you know life is full of ups and downs, and the Buddha continues to say, this is a cause, but you can be free. And he gives us the tools, which is the Eightfold Path. And I think we all know about right thought, right speech, right action, this and that. But how many of us are aware, or we just say, okay, nice guideline now. How many of us, again, have bought into it? Or we're just reading it and saying, it's not my problem. Everything, again, is based upon causes and conditions. And I think to become understanding of this teaching is to put yourself in perhaps the worst condition. I am the cause. And what am I going to do about it? I think it comes down to something like that. And from there, taking responsibility for the things that go on in my life. I like to study Buddhism from an opposite point of view. We talked about the 3 poisons, but at the same time, it can also be the 3 joys. It can be the cause, if it's taken in a negative sense, the cause of something that's negative. But if you look at it in a positive way, the causes of great joy. But it takes you, the total being, taking the opportunity to study something about it and asking yourself, is it true? Is it true? I think it requires all of us to look deep, deep inside and also find that balance. And I've come to learn that life isn't just about me, myself, and I. And I think we all know that too. It's made up of many countless numbers of things that make my life possible. I never expected to be here, but here I am. I never expected to even receive life, but here I am. And so many different things sustain me in my lifetime. The air, the water, the sunshine, all these things embrace me unconditionally. And as far as issues with other human beings, I think I've come down to realize that there's a lack of communication in our lives. That I think we have all the answers, and quite often, even when I give lectures or do talks with my MAs or MAs, I said we have a wonderful word in Buddhism, which is called Mompo. Anybody knows what Mompo means? It means deep listening, sincere listening. And they said, oh, can you explain it a little more? And I said, yes, it means to shut your trap and open your ears. Simple as that. Oh, okay. It means when somebody comes to talk to you, honor that person, love that person, by holding back other perceptions, other thoughts. To take a moment to say, thank you for the opportunity for sharing, and just listening. Because quite often, in counseling, it isn't what you know that helps the person, but the fact that you're there to be with that person, to be able to hear and share that moment with everybody else, that gives them some sense of joy and contentment in their lives. And my wife presently lives in Japan. She's went there to do research and to study. And she calls me up and said, I need advice from you. I said, I'm not sure whether I can give advice. I said, no, everybody says you give good advice. Why can't you help me? I said, I don't give anybody advice. Then how come they tell you give you advice? I try to be a good listener. Good listener. When somebody comes, they'll discuss their issues. I'll listen. And I don't ever tell them this is what you need to do, what you shouldn't do. If I hear something that doesn't sound, just sounds a bit strange, I said, you mentioned this, but have you ever thought about it from this point of view, that point of view? I'd send it back so they can think about what they said. And for whatever reason it is, they go think, oh, he was a good counselor. But unfortunately, I can be myself, but I cannot be somebody else. I can share the moment with someone else. Again, I cannot be you. So I think it's the courtesy of opening your hearts and minds to be able to be another human being and listen to someone who needs help, who wants to open their heart. Every week, I often say to people that I go to a place to become human. Oh, where do you go? I'm a hospice volunteer. So once a week, I spend 4 hours talking to, I don't call them patients, I call them residents. And it's just being there, just spending that time, that means so much to them. And we've come to know, and we've come to learn that it isn't about answering their questions. It's just about giving them purpose. There are times we just sit there. There are times we just hold hands. There are times when we laugh. There are times when we cry. But it's all about being human. It's about being human. So when you have that interaction, it isn't the body or the mind, it's that feeling that you get for each other. That to me is the essence of what the Buddha is. It cannot be described. There was a woman who one day was very happy. And I said to her, wow, today you have such a radiant smile, something going on in your life. She says, yes, she says, I'm very happy today. Would you like to share? She said, okay. And as we know, all residents of hospice are facing end-of-life reality. And there certainly is a lot of anxiety in knowing, a lot of fear. And she said, you know, I found joy in discovering different things. I said, well, what are they? And the first thing that she taught me was, you got to be real. You have to be real. Facing reality. I am ill. My life will be gone in a matter of time. Next, she said, you have to take responsibility for what you did. And she gave the story that when she was younger, she started smoking. So she's suffering from lung cancer. And at that time, my family, my friends all said, please be careful. It was when the Surgeon General was coming out with those things, that smoking can cause cancer. And I said, thank you, thank you, thank you, shut up. I'll deal with it when the time comes. So you gotta take responsibility. And now that the reality is there, you can't blame anybody. But you gotta be real. You gotta take responsibility. But she said, in my life, as I went through these different things, the period in my life that I am now is learning how to let go. And she said, and she gave the example, in Manhattan, because she was single all her life, she lived in a one-bedroom studio. And she said, if you ever went to my home, you see books on two sides of the wall, and on the other side, because the fourth side is the window, you see a whole stack of records, albums I've collected through these many years. And because I couldn't go home, my sister and her two sons said, Auntie, we'll clean up the apartment for you. I said, I was very happy, she said. And she said, well, there's certain things that if you can save for me, or I'd like to have you keep as mementos of who and what we are in our relationship, I'd be very, very happy. So after the apartment was clean, she said, my sister came to see me. And we saved this, and we said, oh, great, and we threw away this, and wow! She said it was difficult to hear certain things that she prized all this time in life, are now gone forever in the dumpster. She said, I became very, very happy, very annoyed, angry. And I sailed into my sister, saying, what the hell you want to do? But she realized that this is something I couldn't do. And out of the goodness of their hearts, my family said, we'll do these things for you. I should be grateful instead of angry. Although I think they should have kept her. So in her period of life now, it's the detachment from these various attachments. How do you say thank you and goodbye? And in every situation we have friends, of course. If you have people that we cannot get along with either. But she said, I've come to realize that each one is very important in my own life. Slowly by slowly, thank you and farewell. That resident is still there yet. And I think she's going through some issues that the reality really is here. But for some reason, she's kind of closed the door to everyone else. But the fact that she came to this point of realization in her life was indeed very meaningful. And all of us, in our own way, have tried to tell her that, no, you still have purpose. We still love you. We're still here for you. But these are things that happen in every aspect of our lives. Some large, some small. But from each one, I've learned to realize that there's something so deep and profound that we can learn. And we're just, I guess we use the terminology talk story, Hawaii, where you just have conversation, exchanging ideas. And as we were talking about these different things, the fact that even to be here at Jodo Shinshu Center for this occasion, how many different causes and conditions, how many different people have I met along the way that have brought me to this very point. What I've learned from this occasion, as I mentioned earlier, is I'm the world's biggest Pakatari, or idiot, because the more and more I study the teachings, I begin to realize that much more I don't know. But what a joy, what a comfort to be able to share. And I think Shinran in his own way had summed it up with the phrase Ondobo Ondogyo. Everybody familiar with that? Fellow travelers on the same path. To know that we're not alone is perhaps the greatest strength that we can share with each other. It's okay to be the persons that we are. And today we did Jusei Ge, and I talked about it last night. It's my favorite chant, and I'm hoping that all of you, because it's been translated into English in our service books, would take the time to understand what Jusei Ge means. Jusei Ge means reaffirming the vows. In the Daimodo Jikyo, or in the larger sutra on the Buddha of immeasurable life, this chant comes out after Bodhisattva Dhammakara proclaims or announces his 48 vows. And he made it into a poem which is Jusei Ge. And in the first 3 verses, he tells you, he summarizes all 48. By becoming a Buddha, I will bring all beings to the highest level of existence, to the greatest joy, and there is no greater joy than enlightenment itself. To be free from all kinds of negativity, to live in a state of serenity that is most joyous. The second is understanding that there is suffering in this world. And I want everyone to know that by becoming a Buddha, you'll never, ever be alone. I will always be there for you. And even Shinran Shonin in his passing, before his passing, said, when there are 2, there'll be 3. When there's 1, there'll be 2. And that other will always be I, Shinran. And the third is, if there is any place that my name is not heard, then I will not become a Buddha. So the vows are meant to be unconditional. It doesn't make a difference whether you believe in the Buddha. It doesn't make a difference whether you hate the Buddha. The Buddha is just saying, will you allow me to love you? That's all. In times of war, when you feel as if you're all alone, no need to worry. I'm there. And it also assures us that one day, the greatest issue that we all face, death, has already been answered. We have the opportunity to go home, to go to a place that accepts us unconditionally. Why? Because the Buddha says, I realize as human beings, there is nobody who's perfect in this world. I realize that everyone cannot fulfill what is necessary to be born in a land like this. But I will do it for you, because I love you. I love you. And I want all beings to feel a sense of comfort and purpose in their lives. So understanding that comes down to, again, the question, why did I receive human life? And I think each and every one of us was given this idea or this life because we all have a purpose to fulfill. What is the purpose? For my time in my life right now, is to be the best human being I can be. To be the best early kid I can be. Whether I'm right or it's wrong, be the best I can be. Why? Because if everything is based upon causes and conditions, how I react to life, how I live life, will have a definite, reaction to other things. Because everything is basically energy. Yeah? Everything is, and karma is caused by different things, by body actions. So it's a matter of whether you have a smile or a frown on your face. It's whether you have open arm or a fist that you're telling something. How you say something, speech, whether it's I love you or I love you. Or how you think, which is the most dangerous. It makes a difference. But unless you realize that you're blessed with this whole gift of being embraced by the Buddha, until you realize it, until you buy it, it'll be a problem. But ultimately, in the Jusei Ge, if you understand it, there is no problem. It's already been settled. Because Bodhisattva Dhammakara did become a Buddha. So all 48, which specifically, or in its own way, calls out to say, I love you, I accept you just as you are, has become the statement of which each and every one of us has a purpose. So I think it's another way of saying, find your purpose, find yourself, and let your entire life radiate who and what you are. Okay? Let your entire being radiate who and what you are. So I remember saying that, somebody said, Sensei, I've got a question. I said, yes. Do you think SOBs have a purpose? Definitely, they're all Buddhas. What? How can an SOB be a Buddha? They're great teachers because they tell us what we shouldn't do. Think about it. They're all great teachers because they tell us if we act that way, these are the results. So you learn from others, just as they learn from you. And everyone, again, has a purpose, because I think the best teachers or the best response we can get is from children. Is there anybody here who ever told their child when they're walking, reach out for me? Is there anybody who ever taught their child to say that? Then why did that child do that to you when they're trying to stand up? There's something that you have radiated from you that the child says in his own way or own way. It has not even said in one word, I love you. I unconditionally trust you. So I always tell parents that you should never ever think that you have no purpose. Each one has a definite purpose. It's just a matter of looking deep inside and finding the balance. Is there anybody here who says, I love myself? I want to be like myself? Why not? If the Buddha recognizes you individually as being the best that you can ever be, how come you're not buying into yourself? But more often, we say, I want to be like somebody else. That person probably say, I want to be like you. So again, going back, what's the problem? The problem is just here. And if you can use the tools that the Buddha gave to us, even suffering is not a problem. Yes, we are going through the stages of old age, sickness, and death. This is a given. And this is true of everyone else. But in each chapter, there is something to learn. Think about it. Being an infant, a teenager, being a boyfriend or girlfriend, being a student. In every aspect of your life, there is something so precious and valuable that we learn. Use that opportunity to not only better yourself, but help others in their development and in their struggles to try to learn something about themselves as well. We are all teachers. There's a terminology for that in Buddhism. It's called Zenjishiki, often referred to as a great teacher. Quite often we think of that as being somebody who's a scholar or somebody who's very outstanding, but each and every one of you was given the gift of being a Zenjishiki. Use the tools to not only better yourself, but think about the people around you, the cause and effect that you have, or the impact you have on everyone else around. Simple. And as mentioned earlier, it really comes down to buying into yourself and keeping in mind what the Buddha was trying to tell you. Buddha never ever said that you had to believe in this 100%. I think Buddhism is one of those teachings where we're allowed to doubt. And I think this is encouraged because when we doubt, and as we go through the life process, we might at one point say, hey, after all, there was some truth to that. Then it becomes real. But unless you go through that, you'll never know. So look at Buddhism from a different point of view. Not exactly what Shakyamuni said this, but ask yourself, if I did the opposite, what would happen? And see a different perspective. Life is too short to waste. Enjoy it. In a couple of years, you can get, excuse the expression, in Hawaii we say makule. Makule means old, feeble-minded. So when I turned 60, the theme for my 60th birthday of Kandeki was, more makule, more pupule. More makule means the older you get, the more empty-headed you get. How true. But I think the empty-headedness comes from realizing how much you really don't know. Growing up, I was a very independent child. And there was a time that I even told my parents, you're the most idiotic people in the whole world. And when I went to college, I said, I know now you're the most idiotic people in the whole world. But I didn't realize at that time that they were thinking about me. Who was an idiot? Who caused their own suffering? So today when I think about my mother and my father, who are no longer here, even my grandmother, I cannot help but say in my own way, thank you. You were thinking about me, but I was too naive and too stupid at the time to realize they were talking to me. And I'm sure that although my parents are not here anymore, in their own way, they can hear me. And we are able to connect to what is known as Namo Amitabha, which transcends anything. We're able to connect with one another to this feeling of Namo Amitabha. Shakyamuni himself, before he passed away from this world, had said, "Our true Buddha has no form." What does it mean? If you're looking for something that's tangible, it's limited. But having no form means it can be anything and everything. It can be anywhere, everywhere. So look at the bigger picture and realize that, again, as we said, there is something out there that embraces me unconditionally. There is something out there that's concerned about me. There's something out there that wants to give me purpose, awaken me to a bigger purpose in my life. And that bigger purpose is you, all of you. If it wasn't for you, I wouldn't be here today. As simple as that. How grateful I am. So I'm not sure how much time we have.
We're over.
We're over. I think my wife was correct. She would say, the fastest way to destroy a minister is to take away the mic. We're experts at, excuse the expression, BS, I guess. But I really want to thank the committee, baby boomers, for this opportunity. I thank all of you for being here, and I look forward to really different discussions, and how grateful I am to be the world's greatest bakatari. But the privilege to be able to share my thoughts and have you guys hear my thoughts on this particular occasion. Thank you. Thank you. Namo Amitabha.